I think that's a really popular movement today, right? You've seen people, especially a lot of first generation college graduates who didn't come from as much. They want to be able to provide that for their family, something that they didn't have. Maybe that's their motivation, right? And the ESA is the right way to go.
Welcome to the Path to Passive podcast, where we talk about building wealth and empowering lifestyle through commercial real estate investing for tech professionals. I always wish that other tech professionals reaching financial freedom had documented their journey along the way, so I'm doing it for the rest of us. Join us as we explore stories, many failures, and lessons learned along the way. I hope you enjoy and subscribe. Collin, so good to have you again here for another episode. Be back with us. This is episode 2 of our series so far. Who knows? We might be doing one more. You've got a lot of great content, a lot of, great advice, a lot of, good things for us to be thinking about as we think about not only our wealth for our future, but our wealth for today and how we can be leveraging these different types of entities and fitting that into our plan. And so just a quick recap on the first time around, you talked about SDIRAs, self-directed IRAs, and that they really are just IRAs, but you broke down what that looks like from a perspective of, Quest holding or custodian, right? We talked about some different options as well, different benefits, some misconceptions about them too. But just for the recap of this call so that we can have this as a self-contained episode for whoever's listening here too, just give me a brief overview and then we'll get into meat the content. What is an SDRA?
Yeah, Stephen. So great to be back. Appreciate you having me again. Talking about kind of a recap from last time, these self-directed IRAs are retirement accounts that in which people can have a lot more control in what they're investing. They can choose to invest in some more alternative type of assets, which, can create potentially higher returns, sometimes brings higher risk as well, depending on what you're doing. But it gives people a lot more flexibility with their retirement investing overall.
Awesome. And you mean examples here, people will think about, alternative stuff, that may not be the most, they may not think it's the most lucrative types of things, right? But that couldn't be further from the truth. When we talk about alternative, give me some examples of what that might mean.
Yeah, I mean, here we see a lot of real estate investing, single family, multifamily, all kinds of creative different ways, fix and flips, rehabs, rentals, multifamily projects, like I mentioned, private lending, cryptocurrency, precious metals,
Awesome.
Land, oil and gas, mineral right investments. I mean, there's a plethora of things that you could really get into.
Yeah, and it's crazy, right? It's basically anything that might be considered Wall Street, right? Stocks and bonds, et cetera. So anything, from a blanket statement perspective, fair to say anything that's not stocks and bonds or on market. Is that about right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is crazy because everyone knows businesses and real estate are the ways to go if you really want to generate, wealth, right? So for it to be alternate is just wild. But
Yes.
One of the things I know that I was hearing a lot when I was looking into SDRAs and IRAs, especially, holding my account with Quest as well, it's just, you hear about, okay, but, this UBIT thing, this UDFI, watch out for that, and, they're certainly something to get to know more about. So walk me through, what is this, what are these things, the UBIT and UDFI, the monsters in the closet under the bed, are these things we should be concerned about? Just walk me through it.
Yeah, so UBIT, UDFI, certainly an important topic when it comes to investing through an IRA, a self-directed IRA in particular, as it comes up a bit more commonly. What we broadly define as UBIT, or unrelated business income tax. There are 3 instances in which UBIT can apply to an IRA, or really any non-taxable entity for that matter. And taxes actually can occur with inside of these kind of accounts when you are investing in different assets, like I mentioned, in 3 different scenarios. The first being when your IRA is running a business. So a common example of that we see, people might use their IRA to purchase a restaurant and have a restaurant operating within their IRA. That would incur UBIT. So taxes on the profit that they're making. I had a unique situation earlier this week where I had a client who was interested in purchasing a vending machine company through their IRA. And so that was something, we kind of had to talk about, the UBIT implications and how taxes might apply even through the IRA. A lot of times, you mentioned this too, a lot of times we tell people it's certainly something that you want to be aware of. It may not be incredibly concerning depending on the kind of investing that you're doing, and tax write-offs and debt depreciation, all that kind of stuff. So that's certainly more of a lengthy conversation, but not to get too sidetracked. The first being running and operating a business. The second instance in which it can occur is whenever you have your IRA own and lease out personal property. So a really great example that we see pretty commonly here of this would be if you use your IRA to purchase a mobile home.
Okay.
Mobile homes have a VIN number. They're technically treated as personal property. So if you have a mobile home park or even just a single mobile home that you're renting out, that's something that can incur unrelated business income tax as well.
Got it.
The third instance, which is what we probably see most often at Quest, is what you refer to as UDFI, unrelated debt financed income tax. So truly, UDFI is a subsection of UBIT. But it applies whenever clients are using their IRA to invest in assets that are debt financed or debt structured in some fashion. So multifamily, is a pretty great example. A lot of these multifamily syndicators, people that are kind of putting together these projects and whether it's construction or value add, right? They're rehabbing already built complexes or condos, something like that. These investors, they're typically, having, or rather syndicators, they're having some investment and some debt finance. Part of that is a loan, right? And so when these IRAs get into these projects, a lot of times there is some UDFI that applies.
Got it. So let's take this up a level then and just talk about it from an example. You're sort of alluding to already, but just to make it super clear. So if I have an SDIRA and I'm looking to go and invest in a project for a multifamily value add, right? That business model is the sponsorship team, the GP team is going to go acquire it. They're going to go fix it up, right? And then they're going to hold it for 3 to 4 to 5, 7 years. They're going to, and then let's say they sell it, right? But that the acquisition of that property, is using a loan, right? And so, and then the tenants who are in there are giving my IRA, they're paying interest and whatever the return is as well on that cash. So where does this UDFI, the unrelated debt finance income tax, right?
Yes.
Where does that come into play in that scenario?
So it's any time that the IRA is actually making profit.
Okay. Anytime it's making profit.
Anytime it's making profit, this UDFI can apply. So and a lot of people have questions about, what are the taxes? What are the rates that I'm actually going to be paying on this?
Right.
It's a variable tax rate because these IRAs are essentially trust accounts. The trust tax rates are what apply to any kind of UBIT UDFI tax, which is variable depending on how much profit that the IRA actually receives.
Got it. And profit is it anything over what the principal amount would be invested?
Exactly right. And what a lot of times it doesn't amount to a whole lot because and kind of speaking to like your engineers or more math number savvy people,
analytical people, right?
Yeah, exactly. A a lot of times, specifically with multifamily syndications, they kind of work on a J curve, right? So you start at the left side of the J. That's your entry point. For the first several years, especially with ground up construction and I think value add a little bit
Yeah.
as well, there are losses, and those losses can actually offset the profit that you're taxed on.
Interesting.
Down year 4, year 5, when that syndication is actually paying off, right? So that's a really big advantage, number one. Number two, you're not taxed on 100% of the profit. You're only taxed on the debt leveraged portion. So if this syndication, let's say, for example, is made up 70% of debt,
Yep.
30% of investor capital,
Right.
it's only going to be that 70% of your profit that is actually exposed to taxation. 70% of your profit after losses. So it really does kind of a lot to think about. There's a lot that goes into the calculation, but those things really are there to kind of help bring down that tax burden, especially through the IRA.
I love that. This is super cool to, geek out on. I don't know what that says about me, but so it's only taxed on the part that's debt leveraged. So if the investment, the multifamily property was leveraged at 70%, then for every dollar of profit earned, you'd be taxed on only 70%. And then whatever is offset by depreciation as well.
Right, exactly.
Would help to bring that down. So, got it. I don't think I'd ever been explained it that succinctly. The ways I was reading it was like, okay. So I'm glad we got to that, because usually I'm just asking questions, right? It's like, okay, what about here and here? How does that work? So appreciate that. So is there anything else that you wanted to mention about how that works or think would be important for the listeners to know about UDFI?
That's really UBIT UDFI in a nutshell. I mean, I always encourage people one-on-one, talk to your CPA, your tax advisor about that. Make sure it's something they're comfortable with. They can certainly give you a pretty good idea of the numbers as well on a particular project.
Yeah. And you and your team work with those professionals as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. We don't necessarily have any like CPAs on staff, but we do have a ton of people who are extremely familiar with this kind of investing and UBIT, UDFI taxes. So
got it. So if you're looking for those, then, and correct me here or feel free to add on, for those that are looking to have acquired businesses with their IRA and operating it from the IRA, then that's when UBIT would come more into play. For those that are investors and have invested in debt leverage types of assets, that's where UDFI comes in.
Correct.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, and I really should have asked this again, but since we're here on it, can you just tell the listener what do you do at Quest? How do you help people that come into the office?
I kind of think of myself as like the jack of all trades kind of guy. I mean, I really, my team, we do a lot of different things here. Primarily, we serve as IRA specialists for our clients here. So we're helping onboard them, fund their accounts, and even taking it as far as, kind of guiding them and what sort of assets or investments they might be able to pursue, sometimes even different options with particular companies, and getting them involved with the other teams, our transactions teams here. We kind of help with really the overall management of the account.
Awesome.
So that's my role, my responsibility for the most part.
Great. So all that said here, just kind of looking at this, right? It's go back to listen to the first episode if you want to hear all about IRAs that Collin broke down. And, you now should be educated around UBIT and UDFI. But the meat of today is really looking at what I like to think about as the advanced strategies, right? We're going to get into that. And we've got different numbers of accounts. And before we get into these, the way to think about these number of accounts is that they're all just different buckets or categories with, by the way, different limits of capacity that you can store with cash and then use those piles of money to do investments with, right? So we're going to get into these next parts. And so The next topic here is actually HSAs. And so just teeing this up, right? If you're a W-2 employee or employee, just like myself right now at Amazon, all these opinions are my own on these episodes. And so, I've got an HSA, but I'm thinking, okay, health savings account. How does this help me to invest, and why does this even entering the conversation?
Yeah, Stephen, that's a really great question. It's kind of funny to think about, right? How does my health expenses relate to this real estate property or this multifamily investment that I'm trying to do?
Right.
HSAs are something that we see, I would say, fairly commonly for people who are, like you said, trying to utilize these more advanced strategies, put more money into their retirement or their tax benefited accounts, right? So HSAs are one, health savings accounts that people can contribute to annually, similar to IRAs. They have a contribution limit. You can put money into that and be able to invest that. We offer HSAs here, so you're able to invest that the same, into the same kind of projects and things of that nature.
Got it. So HSAs, even though it's a health savings account, it's something that I can fund, right? I can fund, put money in. And I know with employers, I think they'll even match some of that, but let's just say I'm funding it. And I can use it to invest in alternative assets as well. Is that about right?
Yes, exactly. And you're right. Yeah. A lot of times, employers who do offer HSAs, they typically give a match. And you can utilize that money even from previous HSAs to put towards some more non-traditional type of investing. One really, really unique thing about the HSA that you don't have, specifically related to the tax benefits, that you don't have with any kind of retirement account, is what we call the best of both worlds. So it's tax advantage on the front side and the back end, meaning that you can put money into this HSA tax deferred, right? So you actually get a deduction for that. You're not having to pay taxes on the money that goes in. You can invest it. You can grow the money within the HSA. It's not getting taxed, right? Once you actually go to take it out, if you're using that HSA or the funds within it for its intended purpose, right? This is kind of what the IRS is trying to incentivize you to do.
Yeah.
If you're using that money for what they call qualified medical expenses,
right.
You can actually take out all of that money tax-free as well. So
Got it.
It's not getting taxed at any point through this process, as long as it's going towards those qualified expenses.
Okay, so I don't need to derail this, but I am going to take a note because I want to follow up on other things that fall in the bucket of best of both worlds. It's kind of, you should just market that all day long, Collin. We have the best of both worlds.
We do. That's the way that we label it. Best of both worlds, or some people call it, would you like fries with that?
That's so good. Okay, so tax deferred on the front end. Tax deferred meaning that it's pre-tax dollars, right? Tax deferred.
Exactly.
So for every dollar I make, Uncle Sam and Auntie whoever isn't taking money from that before it goes to the HSA. And then as long as I'm using qualified medical, spending on qualified medical expenses, then every dollar that went in can come out to pay for that. Okay, so
exactly.
Hashtag about the best of both worlds in that. And so where's the advantage here is, I just want to make it super clear here, right? We're talking to listeners, they're intelligent, they're tech professionals, they like the nuts and bolts and the strategy as well. But just keeping it really simple is that the strategy here, and we're talking about this, is because we can take the HSA and we can grow the dollars in that account by investing them. And that helps to grow the amount of dollars in that account, other than me just funding it or any money that might get put in by the employer. Is that right?
Yeah, that's absolutely, correct.
Okay, awesome. So as an example, then it would be, let's say I have $5,000 in that HSA, or 10. Let's just say 10 for easy math. I've got 10 grand in this HSA because I've been eating my broccoli and working out and sleeping well. And I decide that I'm going to go and, invest in a note or something for $2,000, right? And let's say I get, 10% for that note, or 5%, 10%, just for using math, then I can grow that that money because I'm investing a portion of that money in the HSA, and that will accelerate the growth of cash that I can then go back and use for medical expenses.
Hit the nail right on the head.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. I just wanted to make it super simple. So how does this work? If I have an HSA at work, right, then can I still get one at Quest?
Yes. So, and this is going to be kind of similar to, I think we may have discussed this in the last episode with the IRAs. I can have as many traditional IRAs as I want with different custodians, right? Different institutions.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to change my contribution limit though.
Got it.
So if I've got an HSA with my employer and I want to have one at another, an institution where I can invest it with a little bit more control, then yeah, certainly a possibility. You might even be able to move some of those funds from the HSA with your employer to the new one. You just can't exceed the contribution limit. So it is cumulative between those two accounts.
For the year.
Correct.
For the year. Got it. And similar to the IRAs, is it, in your experience, have you seen it continue to increase in the number year after year?
Yes. So those are adjusted every once in a while. HSAs actually have, similar to the IRAs, been adjusted over the last several years annually. And actually, they just got the biggest bump that we've seen probably ever for 2024. They do depend a little bit on the type of HSA and kind of who uses it. So there's single HSA plans and family HSA plans. Family for you and your spouse and dependents and all of that.
Got it.
Right? So the family plans have a much higher contribution limit, almost twice as large.
Okay. All right. Get into the details. Probably best to just reach out, have a conversation, see what fits for you. But in general, I think the contribution limits for families probably a lot higher than it is for just single then.
Yeah, it's right. I think it's 3,800 or 3,850 for the single plans, and then the family HSAs are like 7,600.
Got it. So
for 24.
Got you. So if I don't have an HSA, if I'm listening to this and I'm like, holy cow, so if I don't have an HSA and I'm thinking I should go open up one of these and I should start putting cash in there so that I can actually, save money really by putting my tax deferred money into this account so that even if I, don't have any medical expenses, I can go and start growing this. And so I forgot where I was going with that, but they should definitely be opening up an HSA to have this separate account, right?
Yes, absolutely. And one of the reasons they're probably not as commonly used as one would think is because there are some qualifications you have to meet in order to actually set one up.
Okay.
High deductible health insurance plan. You can't be a dependent on somebody else's tax return. There's a couple of things there that it kind of triggers a more detailed discussion on an individual basis too.
Got it. I don't want to be totally leading anyone about, hey, go do this, because none of this is financial advice. But I do want to ask, who is this not a good fit for?
I would say, really anybody that is eligible can certainly utilize this, unless they're never expecting to have medical expenses. Even people who are older and can still have some time to grow this account, that might be really the only subset of people which I would say may not be as effective for, would be elderly people that are, as morbid as it may sound, on their deathbed, right? Or people that are kind of close to the end of their time. There's not enough time to grow it and actually utilize it for its intended purpose.
In which case, they're probably better off maximizing certain things first.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, we'll get more into that, but great in general. I just wanted to touch on that. So, if you don't have one, see if it's maybe a good fit. Go and have that conversation. So again, just taking this big picture as we get into some of these other buckets, it's that we're going to describe some of these buckets, but we have this really cool strategy that we're going to talk about in just a couple of topics from now, which is how to really do partnering with all these different accounts. Gave it away a little bit, but that's what we're going to get in meat of. So, the next one here is ESAs. Talk to me about what is an ESA, who's the right, fit for this, how do I contribute to it, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so the ESA, or the government name, the Coverdell Education Savings Account. These are also, very lucrative accounts that I've been kind of biting my tongue on this, but partnering together with other IRAs, other plans, as you alluded to. So the ESA is used for, a lot of times this is best case scenario for families, parents that have children and they want to save for their education expenses, be it lower or higher education. ESAs can apply kindergarten through high school and further, right? For a bachelor's degree, a graduate degree. I mean, these are really applicable at all levels of education. So that's the advantage there to some of the other education savings plans you see as well.
Okay.
So ESAs you can open and contribute on a per child basis. It's up to $2,000 per child per year.
Got it.
You can put funds into that annually up until that kid or the beneficiary turns 18 years old, and be able to invest those funds the same way that we've been talking about into these alternative assets.
Wow. Okay. Got it. So, really, as long as it stays at 2,000 a year and doesn't continue to grow, have you seen that number change over last year?
It has not, to my understanding, in a very long time, but it's something that needs to be adjusted and is being evaluated by the Fed. So it's hopefully something we'll see change in the coming years.
So in theory, per child, you would do $36,000, right? Like, 18 years of age at, $2,000 a year, double that. So 36, but then, you're investing a portion of that as well. And so let's say maybe you get to like 50 or 50K or so, or you don't touch it and they get it in, at their masters at like, a little bit more later, but, really $2,000 a year isn't a ton of money.
Right.
So it's pretty good to have to invest with it. So these are non-interest accruing accounts.
Generally, I mean, so that depends on the institution where it's at, I guess, and what they offer. At Quest, they're not, all the growth comes from the investments that you're doing.
Got you. Okay, cool. So, are these, like I'd heard of things like 529 plans. Is this the same thing?
It's similar. 529s and, there are other plans, UGMAs and things like that. 529s are probably one of the more popular. There are advantages and disadvantages comparing those to the ESA. It's 529s are state run. Like, so there's a Texas 529, a California, a New York 529. Each state has a different plan, which means that they're going to vary a little bit, and there's a lot more. There's definitely differences between the two, I guess is what I'm getting.
Okay. So if those are state run, and so I'm guessing the ESA is federal.
Yes.
Okay.
One of the big differences between the two is if I have so I'm here in Houston, right? If I've got a 529 for my kids, and they decide they want to go, out of state for school.
Right.
Too bad, so sad.
Okay.
I can't use that.
That was the follow-up question. That sounds like a terrible
That's
idea.
the big advantage of the ESA is they can go anywhere in the nation, right? And as long as that ESA is being used towards qualified education expenses, again, we're using that qualified term, right? What the IRS sets to be a qualified education expense, then you can use those toward the tuition, books, things like that, right?
Got it. So it's almost like, not to be crazy about this, but it's just the way, the money shells get moved around. But if if the state had their 529 plan and you're putting money in that, they're probably using those. It's almost like you're giving them a bond because you're putting cash in there and they're probably leveraging it for something else.
Essentially, yes. Yeah.
Got it. And so, okay, if I'm not planning to be in a state for super long, or I'm not really sure if my kid's going to that place, then I mean, this is a whole other conversation bit, but like you said, too bad, so sad if they want to go to a different, school. Like, what do you do with that money, right?
Right.
So anyway, we won't go down that rabbit hole for now. But okay, cool. So that is the ESA, Education Savings Plan. You fund it yourself. It's a federal thing. The limit is getting reevaluated, but it's $2,000 right now. Anything else you want to mention about that before we roll into the next thing?
I think those are the main details. The really big advantage of these is not to spoil it too much, but the partnering that you can do with other types of plans.
Cool. We've been holding it back, so talk to me about
I know.
Talk to me about this. And we've got, just to tee this up, talk a little bit about the problem statement here is one of the things that can be a little bit disheartening is that when you're starting to grow these different accounts, especially if you're the first generation for yourself, your family, whatever, to start looking at these different opportunities to grow your wealth, right? You're thinking, okay, but if I only have an IRA and I've rolled that over and I've started to contribute, maybe I only have, 10, 20, 30 grand on that. And, that's all right, but that might not even be enough for that $50,000 minimum that a lot of syndications are looking for. Sure, I can, cut a check for my IRA and fill in the other 20% or partner with someone or any kind of combinations, but having these different types of buckets of cash and having them all be pieces on your chessboard and part of your strategy is really why I thought, me and Collin thought this would be a great episode to talk about these different places you could put your cash and grow them, where you're not capped at whatever your IRA 67 or, just around 7,000 for the year is, but have these different buckets that you can fill as well so that you can use these together. So walk me through this. How does this look like? What is this partnering strategy?
Yeah, so partnering is something that can be incredibly advantageous, like you mentioned, especially for people who are maybe just getting their IRA started or just kind of getting their retirement savings, whatever that may be. I even see people who like to partner that have millions upon millions of dollars in their IRA, just because it's something that can kind of lessen the burden. You have other people in your network who are interested in the same kind of investing, and you guys strike up a deal, decide to partner together. It allows for more deal flow as well, right? More availability of cash, so you can kind of get into some different things. There's more diversification to be had there, so there really are a lot of advantages to partnering. Mm-hmm. And what you started to mention was, Stephen, the for somebody who has not accessed IRAs or HSAs or ESAs or whatever it is that they want to do, you can kind of get all of these things started at once and have, because of the contribution limit, have more available capital to work with, right? So for these, like you said, syndications, other companies that have minimum investment requirements, you can kind of achieve that a little bit easier. So maybe, a Roth IRA for husband and wife, and then you open up ESAs for all of the kids and an HSA for the family as well. Exactly. And you can see really quickly how that can kind of stack up to meeting some of those minimums and getting more cash into these accounts.
Yep. And cash growth through these investments as well. Cash growth.
Yes.
So, I love that picture that you just described, because having like a family HSA, great idea right off the bat. And then having things like, well, my kids are going to school. It's like, well, do I save for that? Like, well, just create accounts and take it off the top. You're going to save for it anyway. You should just, self-impose, I was going to say tax, but, really thinking to the future there, you're going to do that. You might as well. Right. you don't have to worry about hiding it under your mattress or whatever the modern day version of that is. But,
Yeah.
putting that somewhere so that you can grow it. And of course, there's other conversations of making sure that you're picking investments there that is that are good, backed by like things like real estate, and not, well, why don't I take the same $2,000 and put it in the stock market and see what happens over time? Different conversation, but just having those different accounts for these different purposes that the feds really were like, this might be a good idea, so why not go and leverage these for those purposes? So
Yeah, exactly.
what are so talk to me, like, is that what an ideal picture sort of looks like? Having an HSA for the family, ESAs for the kids.
Yeah, and that is something that we see pretty commonly. I mean, people who are really trying to get things started, and you can see, I mean, even just how like 2 years worth of contributions could really get you started. Right, we're talking $7,000 or $8,000 per IRA, so that's, let's call it 14,000 for me, 14,000 for my wife.
Mm-hmm.
Over 2 years, I can put $4,000 in my kids' ESA, maybe up to 15,000 in my HSA, and really quick, you've got $50,000 there to start working with. So that's kind of a great way that you can start building those accounts. And a really common example that we like to use here, just to kind of give everybody a picture or an idea of how a transaction might look like partnering these accounts together.
Yeah, please.
So I'm going to say, like, in that same example, right? It's 2020, let's call it January 1st of 2025. I made my contributions for 2024. I'm now making them for 2025. Let's partner all, me and my wife's HSA and our son's ESA and me and my wife's Roth IRAs, our son's ESA and our HSA all together.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to pool $50,000 together, go into this multifamily project. After 5 years or so, once that wraps up, we pay our UBIT right from our IRAs, like we talked about. Yeah. We make sure all that's taken care of on the tax side, and now we have profit that's going back free and clear for us to use for retirement purposes, for us to use for our son's education. We can pay off tutors, we can pay for books and sometimes laptops and technology and things for educational purposes. And now we're saving for our health expenses as well. We can turn around and pay off some health related bills that piled up over 2024 or something like that.
Right.
So you can see really quickly how you can utilize these different accounts in so many areas, and how they can all work together cohesively to build and grow that investment capital.
Yeah. Awesome. I mean, I'm thinking about, if I'm going on the really opportunistic side, I'm like, yes, this sounds really great. Like, this is a strategy that makes a ton of sense. On the other end, I'm thinking, super, super skeptical. I'm like, yeah, but if that investment doesn't go well, then there goes a lot of my buckets on the flip side. Right. And while that's true, the opportunity is still there, and that should motivate us to make sure that we get really educated on understanding investments, but also just as well, look at what your own risk tolerance is and which capital you want to put up. And so I want to talk about that because I wanted to give both sides, right? Like, huge opportunity. But let's talk about, and knowing that this partnership works is great, but let's talk about where are the accounts that I should set up first, right? And how can I start building this strategy around myself and my family? Like, should the first bucket that I maximize IRAs first, and then maximize and go put the limit for the HSAs, and then maximize for ESAs? What do you think the order of that might look like, or what questions would you ask someone to kind of determine where they should start?
Yeah, that is a great question, and it's really going to depend on the individual. What I would be asking to try to assess what's most important for them is what their goals are.
Mhm.
Right? Are your goals to or even sometimes their fears, their concerns, right? Are you motivated by saving for retirement and maybe not having enough money once you do retire, or trying to retire early? Maybe the IRAs are the right way to go. Is your concern and your goal to save for your medical expenses? Maybe you're worried down the line that you're not going to have enough to pay for surgeries or assisted living homes once you get much older. Maybe that's the first place you go. Or is your concern paying for your education expenses? I think that's a really popular movement today, right? You've seen people who kind of had to, especially a lot of first year or excuse me, first
Yeah.
generation college graduates who didn't come from as much. They want to be able to provide that for their family, something that they didn't have. Maybe that's their motivation, right? And the ESA is the right way to go. So it really could be a ton of different ways. I would say most commonly
Hmm.
what we see is people go for the IRAs first, and then probably tackle the HSA and the ESA sort of simultaneously. But really, you have to look more intrinsically and what are your values, what are your goals, what are your motivations.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that, and thanks for giving both parts of that answer too. The I'll start with the second one first, which is here's what most people do: IRA first, then HSA, then look at some of the other accounts like an ESA if you
Hmm.
have kids or you're going to plan for it. Do you have to have kids for ESA? You probably do, right? To start one.
Yes. Yeah. Or I mean, you could have like a niece or nephew if you wanted to help them out for their education expenses and invest the account for them. Talk to your brother or sister and say, hey, maybe this is something I want to start for them. That's something we've seen people do here too.
I'm going to circle back on that because I want to keep this train of thought. But
Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
no,
Didn't
no,
mean
it's
to
good.
derail
It's a
you.
good one. So start with the IRA. In general, start with the IRA, HSA, and then look at these some of these others, right? IRA for your own retirement, and then HSA for your own health, and then look at what you
Yep.
can tackle on top of that.
Absolutely.
And then the second, but more sort of tailor made and specific, is what are you most concerned about right now? Are you not concerned about retirement? Do you have that covered? What is your plan for that? Right? Is that investments? Is that lottery? Probably not lottery, but whatever else. Like, what is the plan? How are we taking care of your own health needs, etc. Right? And then kind
Hmm.
of expand. It's probably a very similar track that you're gonna get to, but I could see, but just having those conversations, I appreciate you mentioning because it is where are you at in your stage of life too, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And what are your financial goals? I mean, it's certainly a deeper conversation to be had.
Yeah, awesome. And I know that you guys have a ton of education on the site. I know that
Mhm.
one-on-one conversations is tailor made is always good, so it can reach out. Um, Yeah, outstanding. Honestly, we only have about 5 minutes left on this conversation. I really wanted to get into things like inheriting accounts and passing down accounts and asset protection. Um, you know, I think we will end up doing that third episode, Colin. But
That might be good. Yeah.
let's talk a little bit though before we wrap up today. Is I always like to talk about opportunity, but I think cost of inaction is such a big one here, right? Like we gave for a new listener who may not even have done anything IRA yet, SDIRA, done any rollovers or whatever. They're probably thinking, dude, you just threw me another couple accounts and I can partner these. What and so the point is, sounds like a lot of information, Colin. Sounds like a lot of work. You know, surely you don't expect me to do this overnight, right?
Yeah. Stephen, you're so right. It certainly takes more time, more effort. These investments are a lot of times not as passive. It takes more due diligence, more education, like you kind of mentioned, to make sure that you're not getting involved in the wrong investments, and jeopardizing all of that money you just shelled away into these accounts.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes a lot more effort, right? But the risk and the energy that you're putting into it really can lead to higher rewards, and that's what people are interested in. I mean, especially the people that we deal with, they're wanting to put in the time and the effort that is required to potentially have more diversification, more tax benefits through their investing, more control and opportunity in what they do.
So, and tell me about that. Who are the types of people that usually walk in the door to do these things? I mean, you have to have the cash to fund these. You have to have the time to get educated, right? And obviously, I'm sort of leading the audience here because we're tech professionals, and we make pretty good money compared to, for what we do, I would say. And so, I want to get an idea of who are the people that are coming in and setting these accounts up, especially looking at a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 year process of setting these accounts and funding them too, right?
Yeah, I would say the type of people that we generally see fall into maybe two or three different categories.
Mm-hmm.
So one is going to be your real estate investors, people that already have experience doing this, or any kind of alternative investment for that matter. Multifamily syndicators, real estate investors, people who do private acquisitions, right? And they buy and build up companies and sell them.
Mm-hmm.
But the people that have experience in this space who now want to utilize Quest or utilize these IRAs for the tax benefit is probably category number one. Number two, I would say, are the people who are more fed up with the stock market. They're kind of tired of the returns or the volatility. They want more control.
Mm-hmm.
They want to see some different types of investing. Those people will take their money, maybe not all of it, but some of it, out of the stock market and have more diversification, have more control. So that would be the second category.
Got it.
And the third, I would say, are people who, like we've been talking about a lot on this episode, people who are trying to get started. They see the need for more retirement savings or just investing in general, and want to be able to jumpstart that and really get themselves involved in the alternative space where, sometimes it's people that may have more time on their hands, admittedly, right? They may have a little bit more energy to devote to doing their investment and asset research and due diligence,
Mm-hmm.
and getting educated on these different topics. So that's what I would say. I mean, that's kind of covering a pretty broad spectrum,
Yeah.
but the people that we really see here most often.
Awesome. No, what I appreciate that too is, even working backwards from those two different categories, it's a growth curve, right? Like if you're just getting started, maybe you have done a little bit of some business, maybe a little bit of real estate on the side. I know some people certainly have a side hustle and that kind of stuff, which could be its own business.
Yep.
But looking for that, getting started with these accounts to take some of that business money and turn it into money that you invest. Because just to call out Robert Kiyosaki in this, we have the cash flow quadrant, employed, self-employed, business, and then investor. And so we know that investing cash is usually one that gets taxed the least amount as well. So this helps to support those strategies for investing.
Yes, exactly.
All right, man. So let's wrap up. We're definitely going to do this other one.
I think we need another one. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do another one. And if you haven't already listened to the first episode, please go back and listen to that. Hear Collin talk about IRAs. There's a lot of info about the nuts and bolts of it. Talk more about how it's good for you, etc. Again, there's tons of education on Quest, and please reach out to Collin if you have specific questions tailor-made for you. This next episode that we're going to do, we're doing on the fly here, is we're going to be talking about what it looks like to be inheriting an account and passing down an account as well, right? So for these IRAs, probably HSAs as well, I could see, but these different retirement accounts, what does that mean? What does that look like? What are the benefits? How do I continue to use those? And we're all interested in providing for the kids generational wealth. Obviously, a great idea too. So stay tuned for that one. I know you have an event coming up. So talking about that and where people can find you before we close out, Collin.
We do, and it's I guess 5th annual Quest Expo. I say annual; it really happens more biannually. The last one we did was in 2022. But it's a huge trade show conference that we host every once in a while, where we bring out experts and speakers across the industry, people across the country, even to sit on panels, give presentations, talk about this kind of investing, talk about the benefits of self-direction, and all sorts of things. We'll have lawyers, CPAs, like I mentioned, investment experts there, all the kind of professionals that you need to really learn more and even get started in this space or expand your knowledge. We see people who at all different experience levels, people who haven't started their accounts to the people that have millions built up. So there's something for everybody at the expo. It's actually going to be in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, so here local to us in Texas, at the end of June, the 27th through the 29th. And for anybody who is interested, I really encourage you to check this one out, and feel free to reach out to me or look at our website. If you have any questions, you can just go to questexpo.com for more information.
Awesome. I'll make sure that's in the show notes as well for you to go check it out. Again, for anything else, check out the Quest website, talk to Collin, get your questions answered. I'm stealing this from someone else. I can't remember who it is right now, but there are FAQs, frequently asked questions, but then also SAQs, should have asked questions. So don't leave with any should have asked questions here. Collin, appreciate you. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you on the next one.
Absolutely, Stephen. I'm looking forward to it.
Cool. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Path to Passive. We love connecting with our listeners and those on the path to architecting their wealth and improving their lives. Feel free to let us know what topics you'd like to see in future episodes. Get in touch with us through email or Instagram. See you next week for a new episode.